Welcome back to Mobile Rolling. Hi, how are you, Chris? We're into part 2.
Thanks, Gary.
Right, now we'll talk a bit more about the horses, but before that we'll talk about your involvement in getting into as a board member. How did that come about? You just don't say, I feel like I'm going on the board.
No.
Someone's got to ask you, or you've got to have some sort of...
Yeah, I saw the advertisement actually. They obviously have to advertise them, and I saw the advertisement and thought I'd really like to do that. I think I'd considered doing it the time before, and just at the time.
So what was this when they were having specific board members roles for schools? So you were going in the accounting role, were you, or the managing role, or what was it?
It was just in general business.
Okay.
It was just a general business role.
So who was the chairman of the board at that stage?
So Mark Herry was chairman when I joined.
Yep.
And I came on at the same time as Peter Marshall, so he and I came on.
So you and Peter Marshall, so John Levy would have been on there then, was he?
John Levy was on there at the time, he was already there, yep.
Who else was there? Was Bronte's brother on there, Bronte George?
No, he'd already gone
off
the board by then. It's a good question.
Pat Wren, was he on there, or was that part?
No,
that was after Pat?
He was
Who was the
gone
country
as well.
club's member? Was that Mark?
Would have been... he was chairman of Port Pirie heaps of times, president of Port Pirie a number of times. No, he was on the board though. No, he wasn't on the board. No, I'm not sure. I can't remember, to be honest.
Okay, so you went... When did you first go on the board? What year was that?
So that would have been probably around 2011, I reckon, around that period. And Mark was the chair, and I was more than happy not to be chair, and I just wanted to be a contributing board member, and absolutely loved it. And then he got beaten in an election by yourself, Gary, and all of a sudden we were without a chairman, and a few of the other directors suggested I'd step up and do that. Obviously, I needed to get the okay from my employer at the time because it's quite a busy role, and they were happy to support me to do that.
So at that stage, the industry was going a lot better than it probably is now, for through no fault of anybody's but economy and competition in gambling and horse numbers and a whole pile of things. So at that stage, what was the focus on the board then? Just to continue it rolling on, try to give back as much prize money, or what were you looking at then?
So when I joined, and Mark was obviously, he'd had background with TAB, it was very much about wagering. So the major focus really of the board was to get wagering turnover up, because ultimately that gets the income in, which we can then distribute as prize money. And we'd got ourselves up to around 14% market share, which was unheard of in terms. But
is that when we were on the fixed 18%, or was that after that?
No, after that. So that was in the floating market share. So
and what would be the share at the moment? Any idea?
Oh, probably 8, I'm guessing. But I don't think there's any states that are above 10 now. But we were 14% market share, and we were obviously getting some good gains, and the prize money was actually starting to go up to that $7,000 level that we even have today. That was put in that time. And really what began to cause us some pain, and there's a few things that were unlucky. One of the major punters in Australia had the issue with the tax office, and he was doing a lot of punting through the SA tab, and that was like 15% of the turnover.
Was that the bloke in Tasmania?
Yeah, it starts with a J, yeah. So he basically stopped, so that hurt the industry, and certainly the income into the industry. And then that was the start too of Globe Derby starting to go on Sky 2 on a Saturday night, and that was a big change. What
at that stage were the tracks? So Mount Gambier would have been non-TAB, were they, or?
No, at that stage I reckon the decision had already been made only to run tab meetings.
Okay, so Cadena had finished, gone.
That had gone.
So Port Augusta had gone.
Yep.
Gawler was just hanging on?
So Gawler was only a training facility.
So you really only had Pirie. Kapunda would have been having more than their one meeting. They would have had 7 or 8.
I think 4 a year, I think, at the time.
Yeah. So the CEO at that time was John Lewis, was it, John?
Yeah, John was the CEO.
Okay.
Yep.
So at that stage, in a declining gambling industry, there's not a lot you can do, which is the problem we face at the moment. Is Sky Channel's been great, but also that's the end of your crowds, and if you haven't got horses and can't have good full fields, that's the end of your gambling. So
yeah, and certainly not being on Sky One for a lot of time, it was probably a 30% drop in terms of your revenue at the time, and it was very difficult to get back on. They wielded a lot of power, and in fact, when I joined the board, Sky was still charging the industry around $300,000 a year just to be on Sky Channel. That ended probably about 3 years into my reign on the board.
So when Mark lost his position on the board, you then became the chairman. How long were you the chair for, knowing that I was on that board with you, that you were getting a lot of pressure from your work, that I know that you'd done a super job at the work and they wanted you to do a super job again still?
Yeah, so it was around 2 years as chair, just under 2 years, and ultimately when I became managing director at work, part of the deal, if I got that role, I was going to have to relinquish the role at
So that was the extra role that you're now doing?
Yeah, that's right.
Like the basic running both of the businesses?
But when I agreed to take on the chair role, in my mind, we had to do a few things. You were instrumental in helping in terms of getting the yearling sale up and having the Allwood, the $100,000 two-year-old race that we had. We wanted to get racing back to Gawler. We felt that just reliance on Globe Derby as a single metropolitan track was a problem, and we ended up getting that to happen in that time. And obviously we were focusing on the wagering and improving relationships, but the big one really was getting the Cunningham Report done. That was probably something that I felt if I was going to take the role on, I wanted to have a real crack at trying to improve the industry. And I'm proud of the work that happened to get the Cunningham Report done. Equally disappointed that we were never able to implement its recommendations, despite the support of all the country clubs. We just couldn't get the Metropolitan Club across the line.
On that report, and he interviewed hundreds of people, from a gentleman of, an elite sportsman and an elite administrator, coming into doing a report on a business that he basically openly admitted he knew nothing about, which was the best way to go in with a blank canvas. I thought, I've read the other reports, his report was absolutely outstanding.
It was.
And it would be interesting if those all had have been implemented, or the more important parts, the guts of the thing was implemented, where we would be today, because I think everything that he has stated that hasn't been implemented has been our Achilles heel.
And it would still, I think, pretty well much apply today. He's an outstanding individual, and the way in which we approached it, I met with Brian at the start. I had one intermediate meeting with him to see how he was progressing, and then he produced his report. There was no HRSA interference. We didn't tell him what to write. We said you can interview anybody that you want to interview, and then he came up with that report and he then presented it back, if you remember, at Globe Derby, and also to all the member clubs. And look, it's a bit of a shame that it didn't happen, but unfortunately the structure of the industry, it's not great, and it will always hold the industry back, and he identified that, but
they didn't want to. I think the thing that was sort of very disappointing to me was when it was, and as a board we were trying to get most of it implemented, was that they taken pot shots at Brian Cunningham and trying to say he was who was this bloke? And it was actually the best thing ever is someone came in there that didn't have any hidden agendas, wasn't trying to look after anyone, just looked upon it as he did as a successful administrator in the work that he does. So anyway, that was one thing you did try. But one thing that you did try, and I had people ringing me last week, is when are you going to have another one of those back to Wayville? Now that night there, you can ask Kate Gath, anybody that drove that night, anyone that was there, said this is the best night we have ever been to.
I had a lot of people tell me I was mad when I proposed it.
We did that.
So I'd proposed it a little earlier than that, before you joined the board.
And I said, we'll do this.
Yeah, so before you're on the board, and I was told I was mad for it, that they won't get
dangerous,
all those things, and notwithstanding that some of those comments were probably partially true, I still felt it was worth doing. And then you joined the board, and we got the board behind it, and to get 8,000 people at a race meeting in Adelaide today is very hard to do.
To get I think it was Lance and Kate Gath and Ryan Horrick high-fiving people around the outside of the fence.
Yeah, it was.
They just couldn't believe it.
It was an amazing night.
And of course they then went back to Melbourne and told everyone how good it was. Well, those that did go the next night to Globe Derby could say, well, this is not quite like last night, but
No.
it was the crowds was amazing, and everything was fantastic. Everything was done. I mean, I remember the first race when Wayne Hill got tipped out, or nearly got tipped out, or whatever, right in front of where we were in that little stand. I thought, oh, this is going to be a big night.
Yeah, I was worried. I was straight down the stalls and talking to the drivers to find out whether the track was a problem. And I still remember Jeff Webster came up to me straight away because he could see that I was concerned, and he said, "Chris, it's fine." Wayne was actually in a slightly different cart than the rest of them, and he changed carts, and there was not another problem all night. But when you see the vision, those carts were actually
Going
sliding
sideways.
around the corners.
Yeah.
Shows the skill of those drivers.
Coming up.
And that's why we, as you know, we went for experienced drivers at the time,
Which is good,
because we couldn't just have everyone doing it. And an amazing night, greatly supported by the industry. And yeah, that was one of the finer moments.
It's sort of interesting in the mobile rolling interviews. It's interesting that the older, the interviews with blokes like Rex Vanstone and Rex Hocking and all of those, and we've done Bruce McAvaney, but he was, it wouldn't matter who did that interview, it would have been great. But the nostalgic ones are always the better ones. They don't want to see it. Not interested really in Fred Bloggs, a junior driver who's driven his 50th winner. That to them is nothing. They want to remember the glory days. Yeah,
and things that come from a night like that. It was about promoting the sport, getting it on the news and other things in the paper, and a great mate of mine, Paul Cavallaro, at the time had decided not to drive anymore, and he'd focused on coaching his son Michael's footy team, which my son also played in, and that's how we became great mates. And on that night, one of his prior owners saw him there and said, "Paul, we really should get going again and get another horse." And that's actually what started Paul back into the industry. And he's won the SA Cup since then.
Yeah, so. And now you've got horses with him, haven't you?
And I'm in 5 horses with Paul. I generally just take a small share in everything that he buys. Obviously he's a great mate, but an unbelievable professional guy. Does a great job with the horses, and we've had some great success along the way, and probably the best one is Artillery, who's, I think he's won about 28 races.
And can't reach them at the moment as going for home Artillery. Out wide Sir Lucas running on. Artillery, the Gawler Cup winner, joins Hanging Fire. 200 to go. Sir Lucas starting to run on. Then came behind them Lord Zarias. Can't reach them. Hanging Fire. The inside. The outside Artillery. Sir Lucas is going to have last say. Artillery, Hanging Fire. Sir Lucas coming. Sir Lucas, Artillery. Artillery! He does it again. They can't beat him.
$250,000, and this year he won.
What about the one before Artillery?
I'm trying to think. We've had he had Culture King, who I'm not in. Culture King. Very similar ownership, but I'm not in Culture King. But again, Culture King's won well over 150,000 and a lot of races.
Artillery was a horse that seemed to be, the older he got, the better he got. He was a nice young 2- and 3-year-old, but he seemed to have got a bit stronger and better.
Yeah.
Raced him an angle, and maybe it was that training. He was with Luke McCarthy, wasn't he?
Yeah, Luke McCarthy, and I mean they just don't stop running, as you know, at angle. They just keep running the whole time, and I think that teaches them to follow speed and then still peel. So whilst he's a pretty strong horse, he's really a better sit sprinter. Globe Derby's a little different. If you try and lead at Menangle with Artillery, you're a bit vulnerable. Smaller track, you like being in front as well, so he can lead here. But you know, those cup races, winning the Gawler Cup and the Victor Harbour Cup, they're 2 races I've always wanted to win. So that was incredible.
I think the thing with South Australian racing, I think it's glaring that they say about Emma Stewart comes over in some of those horses, a lot better. But I think a lot of it's to do with the fact that our style of racing is sort of stop-start. Theirs is more pressure. It's like playing in the under-17s, and next week they pick you in the A grade at the Norwood Oval, and the pressure's a little bit harder. So
yeah. Mind you, the times they run on our track, it's amazing when you think about it. I mean, that 2-year-old won 154 last week. Incredible. Incredible.
So, with the harness racing, I know we've certainly had a bit of a turnaround with horse numbers, and without horse numbers, you've got nothing. And I can remember at one stage here on the board, we wanted to go and buy brood mares and breed some, and the board sort of said, "Oh, it's all too hard." How do you think the future is in? Well, we'll talk about Australia. We won't talk about South Australia. We're plodding along a lot better than I can remember when we were there. When some of the smarties were saying, "Well, we should let HRV take over," and we said, "Well, you might find that that's not a good idea." Well, all those people we haven't seen them anymore. They've gone hiding because South Australia's doing a pretty good job on its own.
Well, I think they have. South Australia has always been run on a shoestring compared to other states. You know, a team of 4 or 5 staff on a permanent basis compared to 30 and 40 staff in
more,
Victoria.
yeah.
You know, it's incredible. So they've always done a great job and worked incredibly hard. I think I've had the death of the sport predicted ever since I've been in it for 30 years. This will be dead, it'll die. I don't think that'll happen. Obviously, it changes and evolves, and it's gone away from being a sport that had a lot of professionals in it to being one that's more of a hobby sport.
Yeah, exactly.
You have a job and you still do harness racing as well. South Australia's big enough for a couple of professionals, but not, you know,
not
6
not
to
20
10 that we used
yeah.
to have or whatever. But you know, I don't predict its death. I think it will continue on the way that it does. We have to make sure we get wagering ultimately.
I think on my way here to do this interview, I went past Victoria Park. I can remember going to the races there, and backing 2-year-olds with the Quetterville Stakes, and Colin Hayes trained them, and now there's mud and people running and dogs, and you know, then you go past Cheltenham and it's got houses on it, so it's certainly a changing demographic, you know, that.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyway, just in closing, I'll ask you a couple of really quick questions. Best drivers you've seen? You've been in the game all your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I was enamoured with Lance in the early days, but in South Australia, I think David Harding was probably the best driver I've seen here of a local. Obviously Jeffrey Webster was amazing. I think Ryan Mahoric today is an incredibly good driver and a very good tactician. But you know, we've got some good drivers here, but I think he probably is the best.
What about horses? What's the best horses that you've seen, probably, we'll say, in Australia and New Zealand? Because there's been some world superstars and everyone comes up with a lot of the same names. But
yeah, look, the horse that I loved, and he came to Globe Derby, was Westburn Grant.
Big Frost.
Yeah, a great gate speed and a big horse. Always a shame about Tip Top Prince. I think he had the potential to go a bit further if he hadn't had the injuries. So I think he was a great horse. Obviously, you know, some of the ones that are around now, but Black's a fake probably.
Yeah.
You know, you don't win 400 millions by chance.
Yeah.
And then back in the real early days, some of the horses that Vinnie Knight had, you know, the Sinbad Bays.
Popular Arm and that.
Popular Arm. I mean, he was a bit before my time. I think, I'm trying to think whether it was Paleface, one of them that won a race at Globe Derby Bubble or whatever. But there were some good horses I saw early on. But I used to love the Vinnie Knight stuff as well. He had some great horses.
All right, well, look, I think we'll wind it up. It's been very lovely, nice to talk to you, Chris, and all the very best for the future. And hopefully we might. We did have a horse at one stage together. I sold one at the yearling sales, and your dad bought it, and then said, "Yeah, you're back in it, Gary."
Yeah, we won a few races.
And we won a couple of races. Bella Mystique.
Bella Mystique.
Yeah. So, anyway, thanks for everything, and hopefully we might see you on the track in the future.
You will.
Thanks,
Gary.
Thanks, mate.